I'm Stacey Holmes, and this is Glordinary, a few moments where we celebrate God's glory and champion the ordinary. I'm glad you're here. I've only ever met one person who drinks more coffee than my husband, John. Meet our friend, Kevin. Now, Kevin's the husband of one of my dearest friends, Amberly, and our families have been friends for over 20 years. We've walked alongside each other through life and all of life's changes, houses, jobs, kids, pets, and deployments. Because you see, our friend Kevin is a retired Special Forces Green Beret, a combat veteran throughout the world, and worked as a security contractor in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's not only super impressive, but it gives you some context for this. Because you may have heard me say this before, but context matters. Now, Kev's an intense guy, super personable, he'll joke around with you, but you get him talking about a handful of topics and he's intense. I'll never forget when I was pregnant with our oldest. I was annoyingly 10 days overdue for Sophia's birth, and that is precisely the moment that everyone gives you their best child-rearing advice, like sleep when the baby sleeps and lower your expectations of cleanliness. Just keep the baby fed. But nope, not Kev. He pulls me aside and says, Stace, listen, having a newborn's like being in combat. Nobody's sleeping, you're staggering around in a fog, you don't know when you ate, you don't know what day it is. I mean, you're gonna be okay, just it's kind of like combat. Well, I've never been in combat, but let's just say there were times it felt like we might die if this child didn't sleep. Oh yes, there's been multiple Kevinisms over the years, but we'll get to those in a minute. We've spent now nearly 2 months chatting through our series, Gets My Goat, how to actually read the word. But before we finish our, quote, tour of duty next week, I thought it might be valuable to chat about why this even matters. Or I'll let Kevin explain why it matters. Now, do you remember those youth group kiddos and their Q-tips in episode 105? That's Q-tip, like every day you need a Q-tip. Quiet time in his presence. And yes, the H stands for his, and it's still silent. Well, in our naive pre-kids stage, John and I took these teens camping one weekend. Not glamping, camping, as in pit toilets. So naturally, I asked Kevin to come along and share a bit with our teens as our guest speaker. And I've never forgotten what he said. And he posed one big question to our teens, and it was this. If you were ever in a position where you no longer had access to the word, how much do you have in you? Wow. I mean, just think about that. If you had to live the rest of your life with only the scripture that you have memorized, only the scripture that you really know, would you make it on that? Do you have enough scripture lodged in your mind in the core of who you are to maintain your faith or to pass it to others? You see, Kevin hit on our conversation today. Why does this all matter? Why does it matter how to actually read the word? Well, number one, it matters because we become what we repeat. It matters what we rehearse. It matters what we tell ourselves, tell others. It matters what we repeat. And our faith, our relationship with God builds by what we repeat. Paul tells us as much in Romans 10:17. So faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. And the implication here isn't a one-time deal. It's continuous, ongoing. That's repetition. So, Stace, how much should I read a day then? Well, that's up to you, friend. Some people read through the Bible in a year. Some people read the Bible chronologically. Some people, like Kevin, would read 3 to 4 hours of the Bible a day before the rest of the world was even awake. Look, I'm not Kevin, and I'm not wired like Kevin, which works out because the point isn't how much or even where you start. The point is repetition, and repetition precedes memorization. Because again, if you had to live the rest of your life with only the scripture you have memorized, only the scripture you really know, would you make it on that? It's kind of sobering because a lot of us aren't memorizers. Well, we think we aren't memorizers. But tell me you don't know song lyrics, how to make scrambled eggs, or the exact words that jerky kid said about you at 3rd grade recess, or I don't know, fill in the blank. We memorize the actions, the words, the directions of what plays on loop in our brain. So let's change the loop because number 1, we become what we repeat. And number 2, repetition precedes memorization. I'll say it again. Repetition precedes memorization. See what I did there? So how do we memorize the word? Well, repetition. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but ching. Find what works for you though. Write it on an index card, a post-it note, stick it on your mirror, put it on your home screen, your lock screen. Record yourself reading it or a fancy Australian reading it. I don't care. A lot of people like that accent. Just replay it again and again and again. Reread it again and again and again on loop until it lodges in your brain, plants deep within your soul, because repetition precedes memorization. Well, thanks, Stace, for piling on yet another thing I should be doing, another area I'm failing. Nope, but I'll let Kevin speak to that. It was one of our many evenings spent around Kevin and Amberly's table, and I'm sure we'd just finished tacos together, minus the salsa, of course. Amberly only uses ketchup on tacos, people. Ketchup on tacos. I know, look, let's just pretend that you didn't hear that. I'm pretty sure we were talking about like working out or something because Kevin and Amberly were runners. Ugh, first the ketchup, now running, just ugh. But I've never forgotten Kevin's perspective. He said this, quote, "The routine in our lives now will be what carry us into the future. We won't suddenly become different people when we retire," end quote. And then I'm sure he and John downed another cup of coffee. But that statement still bounces around my brain fairly often because it reminds me of Paul's words to Timothy. You see, Paul was nearing the age of his quote-unquote retirement on this earth, and he says to the young Timothy in 1 Timothy 4:7, "Train yourself to be godly." Because you've heard me say this a time or two, but it's not about trying harder. It's about training. Training is preparation. Training is intentionality. Training is transforming. Training is repetition. Train ourselves to be godly. And if we want to be godly, we might need to understand a little more about who this God is. And the most elite Special Forces Green Beret training available is not a podcast, not a conference, not a book about God. It's reading His Word on loop. So why does this matter? Because the God who created every single hair upon your head knows every single thought before one escapes your lips. He is the one who hemmed you in behind and before, knows you in the secret place of your mama's womb, and considers the very sigh of your breath. That God, who knows you that well, He reveals Himself to you, to me, on loop in His Word. If you no longer had access to the Word, how much do you have in you? It matters what we repeat, because repetition precedes memorization. So faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. Remember, you're not alone in this. I'm praying for you, friend. Have a glordinary day.